Our next winter storm is on the way, and you can see it right there on future radar for the end of this week, into the weekend. In this video, all details on severe storms tracking through the southeast, and of course snow through parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast. Plus, we've got dangerous cold on the way. All the details in this video without all the extra nonsense. In fact, let's get right into this, and if you enjoy, hit subscribe. I always like to take the first minute or two of the video just to kind of give you an overview of the system, then we'll dive into specifics. Snow will be towards the end right after I talk about severe weather. Now here we go. This big system that's impacted parts of the East Coast with tornadoes, flooding, severe weather, all those concerns, that has finally departed on off towards the north and east. Got a little clipper system as I'm filming this video moving through parts of Wisconsin and Illinois, not much snow out of that. Our next system gathering itself together back into the Rockies, and as that system progresses out over the plains, it's going to be another one just like this last system. It's almost deja vu. It's going to develop quickly. We're going to have a warm sector, although the severe weather zone is going to be a little bit further north as opposed to being right along the coastline. We could see some severe storms fire off Thursday night and into Friday over parts of Oklahoma, East Texas, as well as Arkansas, while the snow is ongoing there into parts of Nebraska and Iowa. Des Moines getting included on some of that snow. In fact, Iowa could be a big bullseye for some heavier snow as the system gets going. But again, notice that little linear line of some storms could have some damaging winds 60 plus miles per hour and some severe conditions down there over parts of the Arklatex region overnight Thursday night and into our Friday. Low pressure system really starts to strengthen. You see those black lines on your screen really getting closer together. That means the wind field is expanding. We've got a strong high pressure off to the east of the system, just like we did with the last one. So another big wind field, maybe not quite as big, but still some gusty winds with this one. Severe weather watch for parts of Tennessee, Alabama, on over into Georgia and South Carolina after this moves through Mississippi and western Tennessee earlier on Friday. So through the afternoon, we'll watch it into those other southeastern zones. And then notice we've also got the snow on the northern and while those storms continue here over parts of the mid-Atlantic into our Friday evening going into our Saturday. So this is as we go January 12th into January 13th. Snow progresses northeastward, and once again, just like with the last system, we could see a winter storm warning in Maine as the snow starts this event off there, and then we'll see wraparound snow into parts of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley out of this system. Now let's get into the severe weather aspect and focus just on it. As we go Thursday late evening into the overnight hours, this is when we're going to see this threat arise. So it's really going to be around 10-11 p.m. Central Time Thursday when some of the first storms really start to fire off with this threat and become severe, I think. That's what the Storm Prediction Center's wording is as well. The bullseye, that threat right over the Arklatex, but including parts of Texas, Louisiana, far southeastern Oklahoma, as well as southern Arkansas. This does include a tornado threat. I think that's actually going to really start to expand as the storm heads eastward. But overall, I think the big threat is going to be damaging winds, maybe 60 to 70 miles per hour with a linear line of storms, with some maybe embedded tornadoes along and just ahead of that line into the overnight hours. A lot of what you're seeing here in that Thursday severe weather graphic from the Storm Prediction Center is actually going to be occurring as we make our way into our Friday early morning. So let's track this out. Again, here we go, 4 or 5 p.m. Central Time in the afternoon on Thursday. Still nothing going on over parts of the South Central and the Arklatex. Just some warm air and some moisture starting to pump northward. You'll notice the southerly winds starting to pick on up. Some of our first storm development possible in far eastern Oklahoma, far western Arkansas here as we go, say, 9, 10 o'clock with this model scenario in the evening. But keep in mind, this is not a definite scenario. This is just one model, the HRRR model. At least starting to get a grasp on this system, though. We notice some of that, that warm sector start to lift northward. Maybe some hail producing storms along that. But overall, it's just a line that starts to develop into the Dallas region here on down to Waco, places like McKinney, Texas as well, around 11, 12 o'clock. Thursday night going into our Friday. Look at how that expands, and this is when I think that damaging wind event really picks up in eastern Oklahoma, far western Arkansas, and again on down into northeastern Texas there. Could stretch all the way down closer to College Station as well in Texas, but notice some of those embedded kinks in the line, but especially some of those smaller cells out ahead of the line. We'll have to monitor for at least kind of a low-end tornado threat in some of those as it looks right now. Of course, we will get more updates as we get closer to the storm itself, but we aren't too far out from this considering we're just behind the last storm system. And the environment will be ripening back up pretty quickly, especially with even the limited ingredients in place in the overnight hours with cooler air in place. We could definitely be watching out for that linear line to push east and maybe some supercells out ahead of it into parts of Mississippi at this point, so 4, 5, 6 a.m. Central Time into western Mississippi. But But in terms of the lower level moisture return, look at how quickly moisture builds back up through our Thursday afternoon through parts of Louisiana, Texas, as well as into Arkansas. Those blues indicating dew points in the 60s. That's plenty of storm fuel there. And the moisture department will have just enough convective available potential energy. That's that instability to produce these storms. And we'll also have the low level jet kicking up, especially as the night rolls on. So again, that is why we're watching for severe weather, including especially damaging winds and maybe that tornado potential. Now, as this goes on into our Friday, the risk picks up to enhanced, especially over parts of eastern Alabama, through south central Georgia, through parts of the central parts of South Carolina, as well as into south central North Carolina. But it starts all the way in Mississippi, kind of curls around on up closer to the mid-Atlantic. And this will include, this is your probabilistic outlook here as of your Wednesday evening. And when I'm filming this, of course, we'll be able to tell the wind, hail, and tornado threats as we get closer. Right now, it does look like we'll have a hatched area from Alabama all the way in up to North Carolina for the potential, especially based on the wording from the Storm Prediction Center, for strong, maybe 70, 80, even 90 mile per hour gusts in some of these storms, and the potential for a few stronger tornadoes. So here's how this looks like with the mid-level wind speeds. This is your mid-level jet stream 500 millibars, which is about, say, 15, 20, 25,000 feet up. Look at how that jet kicks on up as it heads eastward. Anything in the reds, especially those yellow colors, indicating a very strong jet stream. Not, necessarily a negatively tilted trough, which is what we look for with extremely strong storm systems. Doesn't really matter, though. The low-level wind field is going to help us out a lot. Notice those yellows developing into Louisiana, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, with that overnight threat Thursday night going into our Friday. This low-level jet, that southerly push, kind of contrasts that westerly push in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And what that does is that helps to increase that tornado threat, and that will happen even more, it looks like, as the storm system heads eastward. Now, we're also monitoring here that winter weather threat, and here we've already got winter storm watches and advisories being posted up over parts of Nebraska, northern Kansas, stretching all the way through the Midwest and into the Great Lakes region here as well, including central and northern Michigan at this point. I would definitely not be shocked to see other areas start to fill in with alerts as well. Could we see blizzard conditions out of this? Certainly. It does look like a pretty gusty and pretty snowy storm for sure. Northern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, parts of Des Moines, Iowa, picking up with that snowfall here. This is the same time that severe weather event begins to the south, around midnight into 1 a.m. time frame Thursday night going into our Friday. As we go to Friday morning, the snow picks up. Notice some rain in the far southeastern sliver of Iowa there. Rain knocking on the door in Chicago, maybe starting off with some snow, some ice, sleet mix. But I don't think this is going to be a big ice maker. There's just going to be a little bit of transition zone right along the immediate rain-snow line. But in parts of central Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, this looks like a considerable snow event, especially there where the snow is just north of that ring, because that's where we're closer to that southerly fetch, but still in that colder sector. If the storm track is just a little further south, that brings Chicago into that as well. So we'll have to really watch the snow totals closely. But there will be that wraparound flow at the end of the system as well, which is what makes this really look like deja vu from our last one, but bringing places like Chicago, Milwaukee, northern Gulf of Michigan as well back into some of those heavier snow bands as this event kind of wraps on up later Friday, heading towards our Saturday. Notice again, here we go, snowfall moving through parts of New England, as well as wrapping back around in the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes behind this storm. And some of those wraparound snow bands could be accompanied by some wind gusts as well. But let's go ahead and head on over now to our snowfall forecast graphics right now. And we're going to flip our way on over to those. And this is how much snowfall we're looking at with a model blend through Saturday, through the end of the day. Heavy snow into parts of the Mountain West, of course. We've got, 3+ feet of snow in some of the higher elevations by this point out of multiple systems. But Iowa, southeast Minnesota, Wisconsin, far northern Illinois, and then on over into far northern Indiana and parts of the Gulf of Michigan really getting in on the heaviest of the snowfall. Here's what that looks like up close. In a place like Chicago, maybe 6 to 10 inches of snow as it looks right now, especially as that event wraps back around. But where you get that uninterrupted snow in Green Bay, as well as parts of northwestern Michigan, maybe 12 to 18 inches of some pretty nice snowfall there. So this is a model ratio of how hard that snowfall is going to come down. So I do think you could pick up on a foot plus of snow, and some of it could be in blizzard-like conditions here. Here's what this looks like. Again, as we go Thursday night into our Friday, the main wind gusts are 30 to 40 miles per hour over parts of the south in that zone I circled. Look at how this wind field expands, though, as Friday rolls on. We'll see wind gusts pretty pretty much cranking at least 30 miles per hour over this entire zone I'm circling, with some higher amounts, especially through parts of Missouri, Illinois, the southern Ohio Valley, as well as on up into Appalachia and western Pennsylvania. And this is the model blend, so to see 50, 60 mile per hour gusts on there is pretty concerning, because we often see locally higher amounts, because of course this is again just kind of an average of a bunch of models. That event continues to head northeastward. Look at that. We see those winds cranking up in southern New England. Looks like deja vu. We see the wraparound flow from the west-northwest. And I'm so excited I'm flinging my hands around right now talking about this storm. And I just hit a sticky note that I had written something down on my desk. But anyway, moving this on here, forecast rainfall from the Weather Prediction Center. The rainfall, 1 to 3 inches in some locations there into Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, as well as Kentucky, as that comes on down in a heavier manner there out of the system. But I think with the overlap of these recent systems, we'll have to monitor the East Coast for the flood threat as well. Now, a new system could bring snowfall here, and this is exciting for some of you in the South. This is as we go towards early next week, around the early Monday morning time frame. Maybe some light snow into Kansas, southern Missouri, Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, Fort Smith, Dallas may be getting in on some ice. Way too early to call on this system, but it is an environment. I'll show you the Arctic air mass in a second that this is working with. This is very dry air, and I think it's going to catch up to the system and make for a very weird setup that's going to be kind of hard to predict. But if we get this to set up like this, we get a little bit of a fetch off the the Pacific jet riding along the subtropical mode there. We'll have to kind of watch for a snowfall potential there into the mid-Atlantic, as well as into parts of southern New England. And could this include New York City? Yes. I think the cold air is in place for this, where as long as you're pretty much in those blue zones that I just showed, because look at this cold air that's coming in with this system. This is going to be catching up to the system. It's just whether or not we have, too much dry air in place to kind of prohibit that snowfall. So that's what we got to monitor. But it's definitely going to be downright cold, 20, 30, 40 degrees below where we should be for this time of the year. Over that entire deep blue zone, colder than average, except on the west coast as we go in that 6 to 10 day range. Your futurecast wind chills with the Euro model. Look at this. This is as you're waking up, say on your Saturday morning, that winter storm moving through parts of the Great Lakes at this point. The flow from the northwest behind it, where it's dry back over the northern plains, this is going to be a downright cold fetch. 20, 30, 40 degrees below normal. Montana really getting hit hard with those colder than average temperatures there at this point. But notice how this is going to continue to sink southeastward behind the system. Kind of gets caught up, but this next system into early next week is going to bring that freezing line further south. Again, as this dry air catches up to the system, remember, the storm system is already into parts of Dallas at this point. It's very cold in New England and the Northeast, so we've got a lot of dry air ahead of this system as it's going to maybe try to work up the East Coast. So that's something that might not necessarily work in the system's favor, but I can tell you this is dangerous cold, everyone. You don't need to be getting outside in this cold at all, as it's going to be 20, 30, 40 degrees below zero in that wind chill department over the Midwest, and then that continues with very cold air towards mid to late month. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. Wow, that was one take. Thank you so much for watching this, and that's it for this video. Have a good one.